You already know that the pyramids are one of the greatest wonders of the world, but have you ever asked yourself why scientists still can't explain all their secrets? Some mysteries are so bizarre that they've even scared researchers. And trust me, what I'm about to share with you isn't just random facts, it's mind-blowing stuff. So, you're about to hear secrets that not many people talk about. Are you ready to travel back in time with me? Let's dive in. Imagine this with me. The Great Pyramid alone is made up of 2,300,000 stones. Crazy, right? But what's even more mind-blowing is the weight of each stone. Even the builders who worked on it must have been shocked. And it doesn't stop there. These stones weren't just lying around next to the pyramid. No. The nearest source for this type of stone was 800 kilometers away. That's an insane distance. Now think about this. In today's world, if we wanted to transport a 50-ton load across that distance, we'd need massive trucks, giant cranes, and a huge amount of fuel, time, and effort. And yet, compared to the stones of the pyramid, 50 tons might only equal 1 or 2 blocks. And here's the real question. Before they even moved them, how did they cut them in the first place? And with such massive sizes and incredible precision. No modern equipment, no electric saws, no advanced drilling machines, nothing. How on earth did they do it? Honestly, what the ancient Egyptians achieved was nothing short of legendary. A real mystery that no one has fully explained to this day. Let's say they actually managed to cut those massive stones. But how did they move them? How did they control them, like they were just simple blocks, and lift them from their original positions? And most importantly, how did they reach such towering heights with their bare hands and primitive tools? Let's assume they found some genius way to do all of this, and that they placed the stones one after another at a rate of 2 or 3 stones per day. Sounds difficult, right? But here's the craziest part. Scientists say that building the Great Pyramid took only 20 years. Do you know what that means? It means they had to place 115,000 stones per year. That's 9,500 stones per month, which means about 319 massive stones every single day. Let me repeat that for you. Every day they were cutting the stones from the quarries, transporting them 800 kilometers, lifting them to incredible heights, and placing them with insane precision. And they repeated this process 319 times a day. Even with today's most advanced technology and machinery, this would still be practically impossible. So, how did they do it? Honestly, this whole thing goes beyond human capabilities. And that's why some of the wildest theories have emerged to explain how the pyramids were built. Some people believe they were built by giants, while others are convinced that jinn were the ones who constructed them. And then there are those who think the ancient Egyptians had advanced technology, even more advanced than what we have today, but we just haven't discovered it yet. And of course, the most famous theory of all, aliens came to Earth and built them. There are tons of theories. Some of them are almost logical, while others are just straight up hilarious, because to this day, there's still no 100% clear explanation. By the way, if you're interested, I could make a full video just about these crazy theories. But in this video, we're not just going to talk about the mysterious and the unknown, Because there's something even more important: the power of the pyramids and their unshakable legacy throughout history. Stick with me, because what's coming next is even more mind-blowing. Let me take you on a quick journey through time. You know the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Not the ones we talk about today, but the real, legendary wonders that amazed the ancient world. Each one was a masterpiece in its own right. But guess what? They all disappeared. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, gone due to an earthquake, no one even knows exactly when. The Temple of Artemis, completely destroyed by the Goths about 1,800 years ago. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, mysteriously vanished, most likely destroyed during riots 1,500 years ago. The Colossus of Rhodes collapsed after a massive earthquake over 2,300 years ago. The Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, demolished, wiped off the map. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, lost to violent earthquakes. Every single one of these incredible monuments, the greatest wonders of the ancient world, gone, destroyed, erased from existence, except for one: the pyramids. Despite thousands of years, wars, and natural disasters, they're still standing, still towering over time itself. So the question is, how? What's their secret? Why are they the only ones that survived? In a way that defies logic, the pyramids have withstood everything you can imagine. Neither geology has affected them, nor has time managed to erase them. Not even human enemies who have tried to destroy every great thing in history. But there's something nobody talks about: the temperature inside the pyramid. Imagine this. In the peak of summer, when the desert heat outside reaches 50 degrees Celsius, you step inside the pyramid, and the temperature is almost constantly 20 degrees Celsius. Not just in summer, even in the freezing winter, even during heavy rain, even in extreme cold, the temperature inside barely changes. It fluctuates slightly, but it remains around 20 degrees Celsius. How is that even possible? And that means the pyramids were basically the world's first centralized air conditioning system. No electricity, no fans, no modern equipment, just massive stone blocks, yet they achieve something we still don't fully understand. The ancient engineers were geniuses, truly brilliant. But hold on. There's another mystery you need to focus on. Take a deep breath, because what's coming next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about the pyramids. Are you ready? Imagine this. There's a hidden passage beneath the pyramid that slopes downward for a long distance. The further you go, the narrower it gets, until you barely squeeze through to reach a very strange chamber. It looks like a burial room, and everyone assumes it's the king's tomb. But the shock. The room is completely empty. No mummy, no statues, nothing at all. Maybe the king is buried in another room? Let's go up to the next chamber. Also empty. How about the next one? This is the so-called King's Chamber, a place very few people in history have ever reached. Getting up there is hard. The air inside is heavy, and the whole place feels unnerving. And after all that effort, this chamber is empty too. Wasn't the pyramid built to be the king's tomb? Then why did he make all these chambers so hard to reach? And more importantly, where is the king? What do you think? Does this all make sense to you? Or is this way stranger than we ever imagined? Every pharaoh was buried with insane amounts of treasure. We're not talking about just a few gold pieces or small statues like the ones found in the tombs of priests or officials. We're talking about massive amounts of gold and priceless jewels, enough to make any daring thief risk their life just to steal it. Why so much treasure? Because the pharaohs believed they would need their wealth in the afterlife, so they took everything with them to the tomb to make their journey after death easier. The problem? These tombs were way too tempting for thieves, and throughout history, every time someone found a royal tomb, they looted everything inside, not just the gold. Even the mummies themselves were stolen. So when we talk about treasures, we don't mean just a few gold bars. We're talking about a whole different level of wealth. Treasures so valuable they could change the life of anyone who found them. Could this be the reason why the chambers inside the Great Pyramid are empty? Or is there something even deeper going on? Take Tutankhamun as an example. He was just a young pharaoh who died at 18 years old and wasn't even a great ruler like Thutmose, Ahmose, or Khufu. Yet, when his tomb was discovered, they found around 5,000 artifacts, most of them made of pure gold. Even his sarcophagus was made of solid gold, and it's considered one of the most valuable artifacts in the world, something truly priceless. Now imagine this. That was just the tomb of a young king who didn't rule for long. So what about great pharaohs like Khufu, Thutmose, or even Queen Nefertiti? The amount of treasure buried with them could probably fill an entire museum. Literally, a single royal tomb could have been worth the budget of an entire kingdom at the time. That's why, back then, tomb robbers were willing to risk their entire lives just to find one royal tomb. Because if they succeeded, they wouldn't just find a treasure, they would find a fortune big enough to last for generations. Imagine the fear in the hearts of the pharaohs, knowing that after their death, people would do whatever it takes to rob their tombs. That's why they started hiding their burial sites in impossible-to-find locations, making sure no one could ever reach them. Some pharaohs dug their tombs incredibly deep underground, while others carved them into mountain rocks, all just to protect their treasures in the afterlife. But listen to this. Some kings went to extreme lengths. After their tomb was completed, they executed the architects and workers who built it, to make sure no one knew its location or could betray them to future tomb robbers. Just imagine how terrified they were of someone breaking into their tomb and stealing everything. But here's the strange part. The looting of these tombs led to something incredibly mysterious, something you've probably heard about before: the curse of the pharaohs. Keep that in mind, because we'll get back to it soon, and what I'm about to tell you will shock you. King Khufu's case was completely different from the other pharaohs who tried to hide their tombs. Khufu didn't want to be just another name, lost to history, nor did he want his tomb to be forgotten after a few hundred years. No, this man wanted to create a legend, something that would stand for thousands of years, visible to all. So instead of burying himself in a secret location, he decided to build the greatest and largest monument in history, a structure like no other before or after it, a building that stood like a mountain, untouched by time or human destruction. The Great Pyramid. But here's the problem. How do you protect your treasure from thieves when literally everyone knows where it is? Unlike other pharaohs who had hidden tombs, Khufu's tomb was in plain sight. Tomb robbers didn't even need to search for it. You could see it from miles away. Even if you were the worst tomb raider in history, you wouldn't waste time digging randomly because the tomb was right there, towering over everything. And that was the challenge that Khufu set for himself and his engineers. How do you make a tomb that is completely obvious, yet impossible to rob? Imagine this. You're standing before the Great Pyramid, knowing that the king is buried inside, and that within its walls lies a treasure beyond value. Your mind is burning with curiosity, your heart is racing, and you're desperate to find the entrance and reach the treasure hidden inside. But no matter what you do, you just can't. This was the mystery that puzzled people throughout history. Thieves, engineers, archaeologists, all of them were caught in an obsessive race to find the tomb of the king inside the Great Pyramid. After long and exhausting attempts, they would always find clues. An inscription here, a strange opening there, something unusual, as if the pyramid itself was whispering, "Come this way." So they would follow the trail. They would enter a long passage, walking deeper and deeper. The air grows colder, the darkness surrounds them, and with every step, the tension rises. Suddenly, the space begins to narrow, as if the pyramid itself doesn't want them to continue. But they refuse to give up. And finally, after unimaginable struggle, they reach a massive chamber. Dust covers the floor, the walls stand silent, and the entire place radiates both majesty and terror at the same time. Is this the burial chamber of the king? Is the treasure here? Or is the pyramid still deceiving them? Imagine their feelings. Years of searching, digging, and immense effort, and finally, they're inside the king's tomb. But in the end, the chamber is empty. No mummy, no gold, no treasures, not even a single trace of King Khufu himself. Shock, disbelief, frustration. Was everything they worked so hard for just a trap? And that's exactly what happened when MrBeast and his team entered the pyramid. They explored its strange chambers, but all of them were empty. The reason? They weren't real tombs. It was all part of a genius deception, a brilliant distraction so that anyone trying to rob the pyramid would end up in the wrong place, thinking they had succeeded. But in reality, they had failed. Imagine this. MrBeast and his team entered places inside the pyramid that no one had ever stepped into before, not because they were hidden, but simply because they were off limits. And that alone raises a huge question. Why? Did their exploration reveal a new secret? Not exactly, but it confirmed a theory that was shocking for many people. A theory so strange that it's hard to believe. But the problem is, there's a lot of evidence supporting it. But before I tell you about it, let's go back to King Khufu and his engineers. These people were way ahead of their time. They didn't just build the pyramid, they masterfully tricked anyone who tried to break into it, whether thieves, explorers, or even archaeologists. And in the end, Khufu and his engineers won. So, after thousands of years, no one knows where King Khufu is inside the pyramid. You might say, how? That's impossible. It's just a building. We can bring in scientists and workers and keep digging until we find the chamber and the treasures inside. That's where I need to remind you of something important I mentioned at the start of this episode. The pyramid is not just an ordinary building. It's made of 2,300,000 massive stones, stacked together in a way that's impossible to dismantle easily. Now imagine trying to search for a hidden passage or a secret chamber inside this stone labyrinth. How? Literally, the only way to do it is to take the entire pyramid apart, stone by stone, and move it from its place. And let me say it bluntly, that's never going to happen. No one will ever be able to touch a single stone of the pyramids. But even if, somehow, they decided to take it apart, do you remember how difficult and complex it was to build in the first place? Believe me, tearing it down wouldn't be any easier. And that's why Khufu's tomb and his treasures will remain one of history's greatest mysteries. No one knows where they are, and no one will probably ever find them. Let me tell you something else about the pyramid that will make you rethink everything. Beyond its massive size and the mystery of the king's chamber, the precision with which it was built makes no sense at all for the time it was constructed. For example, the four sides of the pyramid align perfectly with the four cardinal directions of the earth. North is exactly north, south is exactly south, east is exactly east, and west is exactly west. No tilt, no deviation, nothing. So, how? They didn't have compasses, GPS, or even highly accurate maps. We know they used the stars and the sun, but do you think that's enough to achieve 100% alignment? And here's something even crazier. The pyramid's base, despite being massively large, is almost a perfect square. The northern side is exactly the same as the southern side. The western side is exactly the same as the eastern side. And the difference between them? Just 13 centimeters. That means an accuracy of 99.9%. Imagine, even today's engineers, with the latest technology, struggle to achieve this level of precision. And this was built 4,500 years ago. So the real question is, how? You know what puzzles me even more than how the pyramid was built? Why they cared about every tiny detail with such insane precision. Okay, fine. The king wanted a massive pyramid, fair enough, and they actually built him the greatest architectural wonder in history, a pyramid weighing over 6,500,000 tons, made of 2,300,000 stones blocks, each bigger than a grown human. But why this obsession with precision? Why did every side have to match the others with 99.9% accuracy? Why did it have to align perfectly with the four cardinal directions, with zero margin for error? Why did they care about every single millimeter in the design? I mean, think about it. If one side was 10 meters longer than another, would it really matter? If the pyramid was tilted just 1 or 2 degrees off the true directions, would anyone at the time even notice? Why go through this insane level of effort for details that no one would have been able to measure back then? Even the king himself wasn't going to grab a ruler and check the accuracy. There's a secret here, a strange mystery. It's clear that this is much more than just a tomb for a king. And I'm sure you're about to understand the real secret very soon. Of course, inside the pyramid, there aren't just corridors and chambers. There are also inscriptions and drawings that document the lives of the ancient Egyptians, almost like they left us a documentary film about their civilization. You'll find scenes depicting how they farmed, cooked, and treated the dead, all normal, just a record of their daily lives. But here's where the mystery began. When we discovered drawings that explained what happens after death, the big questions started to arise. The ancient Egyptians believed that after death, the soul ascends to the sky, reaching a heaven made of stars, where they would live forever. At first, historians didn't pay much attention to this. After all, the idea of ascending to heaven after death existed in many ancient civilizations. But over time, some Egyptologists started connecting the dots, and they came up with a theory that was extremely strange. What if the pyramids were never meant to be tombs at all? What if they had a greater purpose than just burial? The theory suggests that the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids as a means to transport their souls to the starry heaven after death. Of course, at first, this was just a theory without strong evidence, until 1994. That year, a Belgian engineer and a British historian published a book titled The Orion Mystery, and suddenly, the theory went from being a crazy idea to a global sensation. The book sold millions of copies, and the whole world started asking, are the pyramids really just tombs, or are they something far bigger and more profound than we ever imagined? To understand the full story, let's go back to the Orion Belt Theory. The idea is simple. The three pyramids were not built randomly. Their locations align perfectly with the Orion Belt, a formation of three massive stars in the sky. According to the theory, the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids to transfer their souls to these stars after death, as they believed these stars represented paradise. This theory was widely accepted for a long time, and people started believing that the ancient Egyptians had a deep spiritual connection with the stars and the heavens. But then, in 2012, everything changed. A Belgian researcher named Philip Coppens took the theory to a whole new level. He claimed the ancient Egyptians were not just trying to transfer their souls to the sky, they were actually planning to transport their entire bodies there. The idea suddenly shifted from spirituality to something closer to science fiction. Of course, no one believed him at first, because the concept seemed impossible. But Coppens had evidence, and you already know what it is. The pyramids contain chambers and sarcophagi, but they are completely empty. Remember the so-called fake rooms we talked about earlier? When scientists asked, where are the mummies that were supposed to be inside these sarcophagi? The logical answers from researchers were, either these chambers were a deception to mislead tomb robbers, or the mummies were actually here, but were stolen by thieves. But Philip Coppens didn't believe either of these possibilities, because he had a much crazier theory. Maybe the mummies weren't stolen, but were actually transported to the sky. And this is the point that made Philip Coppens completely convinced of his theory. Because the issue isn't just about empty sarcophagi, but about sealed chambers that had been untouched for thousands of years. When scientists opened them for the first time in modern history, they found them in perfect condition, as if they had been sealed just yesterday. No signs of robbery, no damage to the walls or floors. Everything was intact, but the mummy was missing. So, if the chambers had never been opened before, how did the bodies disappear? And that's when Coppens' mind-blowing theory came in. After the king was buried and the chamber was sealed tightly, in some unknown way, the bodies vanished completely. Coppens was convinced that the engineers or priests had actually succeeded in making the pyramid fulfill its true purpose, transporting the bodies of the dead from the pyramid to the sky, which means the sarcophagi were empty Not because tomb robbers stole the bodies, but because the bodies themselves had been sent there. And this is where things take on a completely different dimension. Was the pyramid really just a tomb? Or was it part of a complex, precisely calculated process, one that spanned between Earth and the heavens? Suddenly, everything started to make sense in a strange way. The extraordinary precision in construction, the incredible attention to measurements and alignments, the perfect alignment of the pyramids with the stars. All of this wasn't just architectural mastery. It was part of something much bigger and carefully designed. The pyramids weren't just tombs. There's something much greater going on. Imagine this. What if the ancient Egyptians truly believed that massive towering structures could act as a gateway to the sky? Not just as tombs built with extreme precision, but as an actual means of transporting the physical body, not just the soul. And I think this explains why they calculated every angle and every millimeter with unbelievable accuracy. Why every detail was based on complex calculations rather than randomness. Because to them, it wasn't just a tomb, it was something far greater. Now, where are the bodies? To this day, many of the sarcophagi found inside the pyramids are empty, and scientists said they were stolen by tomb robbers. But in some sealed chambers that had never been touched, there were still no bodies. So, did the ancient Egyptians actually succeed in carrying out what they believed in? Of course not. But the fact that they even thought this way makes us see the pyramids from a completely new perspective. This really makes you rethink everything we thought we knew about the pharaohs. And with that, we've reached the end of the episode. If you enjoyed the information, hit the like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, tell me, what do you want the next video to be about? By the way, the Curse of the Pharaohs, I think it deserves a full episode. If you're excited, let me know in the comments, but most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.